Hello, everyone. Happy week 2. This is Professor Miller checking in with you. I know that we kind of gotten off a little bit on a rough start with the discussions, so I just want to provide a little bit more information and context about the deadlines and sort of the expectations for those discussion boards. I think oftentimes when we know why we're doing something, it makes it a lot easier for us to sort of be compliant and meet those expectations. Okay. So first off, I want you to be holding yourself accountable and taking yourself off of autopilot. I think we're getting a little bit too reliant on these various tools, these various technologies that are, kind of help us keep things on track, and we're not always kind of thinking about how to make things work for ourselves, right? We're all going to have different schedules, different obligations. Maybe some of you work full time. Maybe some of you have children or spouses. So family obligations. I don't really know everyone's situation, but indeed, online education cannot be a one size fits all in terms of the deadline. So I want to make sure that you are thinking about a schedule that works for you. I think a little too often students are only logging in on the days when they actually have coursework due, and that's not going to be the best strategy. When the announcement comes out at the beginning of the week, and you know that email hits your inbox, or maybe even before that, especially if you know you have a busy week coming up, you should be looking at what the assignments are, what they sort of entail. Not everyone is going to accomplish a lot of these assessments in the same amount of time. Okay, everybody kind of learns differently. Everyone has different strengths and weaknesses, which makes it all the more important that you know what's kind of coming down the pipe. So you might not be able to accomplish that assessment successfully in the account if you are waiting until the day of the deadline. So for instance, maybe you are finding some of the reading challenging. Many students don't think that means that you're not more than up for the task. Some of us just read and comprehend texts more readily than others. So for instance, if you needed a bit more time with this week's reading, you might have maybe started on Monday. Maybe you read it through it a couple times to make sure you understood it, and then maybe you accomplished the actual writing portion of the discussion on Wednesday. I really don't know, but those are the sort of things that I want you to be thinking about sort of more deliberately. And that's going to kind of overlap with my next point, which is spreading your work out across the week. Now, particularly if you are planning on transferring to university eventually, you're going to find that there isn't as much of a built-in rhythm to a lot of your courses. You can generally kind of tell, I think for the most part, once you get in the groove in this course, you know, what is coming down the pipe and about how long the coursework is going to take to accomplish. But when you get to the university level in particular, you're going to find that you're going to have some weeks that are sort of light on the work that's due and weeks that are kind of heavier on the weeks that are due. So for instance, let's say one week you have a 2-page paper due in a university level course, and then next week you have a 10-page paper. It is probably not your professor's expectation that you accomplish that 10-page paper all within that same week. Instead, you should be spreading it out. It might not necessarily, a lot of the work might not even be accomplished in that week. Maybe a couple weeks before the assignment is due, you start your research. Maybe the next week you write out an outline. So make sure you're kind of thinking about, how you best learn, what your schedule is, and kind of what kind of time that you need to accomplish a particular assignment. The other thing is that we should be contributing to the learning environment. Now, because this is an asynchronous online course, when you are able to kind of come in and contribute to that environment is going to differ. So we want to be as considerate as possible to our fellow classmates, which is why we have that Wednesday deadline. So, so if it was just that Sunday deadline, there was no Wednesday deadline for the initial discussion board, students might not have anyone really to reply to if everyone's waiting till 11:30. Maybe some of us are in bed because we've got to get up and take kids to school on Monday morning or something like that. Maybe have an early morning Monday class. So they're not necessarily going to be on there for those students who are waiting till the last minute to contribute. And while we're on that topic, let's also talk a little bit about following directions and how these discussions are supposed to unfold. So I'm already kind of seeing a lot of students are not reading the directions, and that's going to also help with us taking ourselves off that autopilot and actually kind of reading sort of intentionally. Don't just assume that you know what the parameters of that the assignment is, what the expectations are. So for instance, this week you were supposed to write 250 words for each section. I see a lot of students not meeting that word count requirement. And also you were only supposed to choose one question from each of those lists to answer. So it gets a little gummy, gets a little confusing when we are not labeling those or maybe not following that direction. So let's say you actually answered all of those questions in your 2 responses in the discussion board. It makes it a little tougher for your fellow students who did follow the directions to engage with you. So make sure that you are doing that. It's not always about us. I know a lot of times students look at the discussions as this is how I fill this little box. This is how I put a grade in there. But it should be more than that. It should be, kind of building those academic communities, connecting with our fellow students and with your professor as well. Which brings me to my next point, which is that the discussion should be replacing the face-to-face discussions that we would be having if this was a face-to-face class. As such, if I were to ask you a question in a face-to-face class, I think it's unlikely that you would just ignore me. The same thing. I don't think with your classmates. I don't think if your classmates said something to you, commented on something you said or asked you a question, that you would ignore them either. But that is kind of what I'm seeing so far in the discussions. It's not my expectation that you will answer every single question or respond to every single student that talks to you. That can make things pretty heavy. We might have many replies right up until that deadline. But do endeavor to follow up here and there. Otherwise, we're just kind of like asking questions into the void. If we're just asking questions and no one's actually answering them, that is not how discussions typically unfold. As in terms of responding to me, oftentimes I am going to ask you those questions because you did not quite follow the directions for the assignment. So I'm kind of giving you another opportunity to correct yourself and to meet those obligations so that you are not penalized at grading. I might also be making a check for understanding or, just trying to, extend the conversation. So if you do answer me, you can earn up to 3 extra credit points. Just keep in mind that if you respond to me, that does not count as one of your 2 responses to classmates. You should still be responding to 2 classmates and then me. That's how you get the extra credit because it's extra. It's extra in addition to what the minimum expectation is for the assignment. All right, guys, hopefully that helps kind of clear the air on a few things. Make sure you are holding yourself accountable, kind of building your schedule in a way that works meaningfully for you. Taking yourself off autopilot, I know myself included, I get a little and I'm not always thinking intentionally because I do have these tools, these safety nets to kind of keep me on track. But I also need to make sure that I'm holding myself accountable, that you're spreading your work out across the week. I really don't recommend just accomplishing your coursework on those days that we have deadlines and contributing to the learning environment and building that community and connection that is sometimes a little bit more challenging to build in the online setting. All right, have a wonderful holiday weekend. I'll see you back.